I owe my career to a dog named Spot. In 1998, I was volunteering for Habitat for Humanity in Fayetteville, North Carolina, helping to repair homes for economically disadvantaged people. I was pursuing a career in law enforcement at the time. Police officers I'd greatly respected told me how much of their job was social work, so I was determined to begin meeting and helping people from very different backgrounds. Habitat for Humanity was the perfect way to do this. After doing extensive repairs, we always had leftover wood. My friend Ed Event, who managed the Habitat volunteers, had met an old woman named Ms. Baker, who lived nearby and struggled to heat her home in the winter. He suggested we drop the extra wood at her house so she could burn it in her stove. The next day I threw the wood into my truck and drove over to Ms. Baker's house. She lived at the end of a dirt road. The only buildings on it were her house and the church she attended. Her yard was a muddy patch of ground filled with weeds. Ms. Baker, in her 80s and very overweight, struggled to move around on her own. She had a thick Southern accent and managed to inject "the Lord" into nearly every sentence. Ms. Baker lived alone with a German Shepherd Chow Chow mix named Spot, a gorgeous dog with a flowing, lion-like mane, rounded black ears, and eyes that were playful and wild. He was only 2 or 3 years old, but Ms. Baker was struggling to take care of him. Spot lived outdoors in a dilapidated wooden doghouse. When I first saw him, he was nibbling on moldy biscuits and lapping up muddy sludge from his water bowl. His soaking wet fur was caked in months-old mud, and he was tethered to the doghouse with a chain so mangled it was gouging his neck. He was at least 15 pounds underweight. I approached Ms. Baker while she sat in her porch rocking chair. "Ms. Baker," I said, "I can't help but notice that Spot isn't doing very well. He's so wet, and that chain is causing him to bleed." "Mm-hmm," Ms. Baker replied. "Thank you for the firewood." "If you don't mind, I'm going to start coming by and feeding him and changing his water. I'll also walk him and keep bringing you firewood. Deal?" Ms. Baker huffed, harumphed, and then agreed. For the next few months, I regularly visited Spot and Ms. Baker with an armload of firewood and a pocket full of kibble. At first, Spot was just as skeptical of me as his owner was. He'd growl and nip at my hand when I gave him food. As he had never been trained, he hadn't learned to associate humans with care and shelter. Ms. Baker probably never petted him or let him inside the house, only occasionally tossing him scraps from her porch. Spot's entire life had been spent inside or next to that tiny doghouse. He had never learned to interact with another living thing and therefore was reverting to his most base instincts. When I stood next to him while he was eating, he thought I was threatening his catch. When I came over to pet him, he thought I was attacking. For the first several weeks, I tossed Spot his food from a distance, but I made sure he knew it was coming from me. After he had eaten, I'd slowly approach, hold out my hand, and allow him to smell me for as long as he wanted. Sometimes he'd let me get close enough to attach a leash. Other times he lunged at me, and we'd have to try again the next day. I had to learn to approach Spot calmly and confidently. If I acted with purpose, he was calmer. If I was hesitant, he would lash out. If I managed to coax him close to me, he let me pet and hold him for an hour. Once, while out for a walk, I came too close while Spot was sniffing a log, and he lunged at me, barking and snapping. I retrieved a piece of baseboard from my truck and bound it to my jean jacket to protect my arm. "Easy, Spot," I said. "Relax." I approached him again, and his ears were sticking back in submission. I waited until he calmed down and then brought him back to his doghouse. Spot was always calmer after he walked in the woods. He couldn't focus until he had burned off excess energy. If he wanted to go for another walk, we did that. If he wanted to slobber my face with kisses, we did that. Sometimes all Spot wanted to do was sit with me and listen to the distant hum of traffic. We'd do that for hours at a time. After several months, Spot would come to me when I called him. He trusted me to refill his food dish. He patiently waited for me to slip the leash around his neck. He was gaining weight. When I pointed out how much better Spot was doing, Ms. Baker said, "Mm-hmm, thanks for the firewood." I loved taking care of Spot, but I couldn't stay in Fayetteville forever. In the back of my mind, I knew the grim truth. As soon as I left, it would be back to the moldy biscuits, the muddy water bowl, the mangled chain. Spot wouldn't survive the winter.